So today we're going to be talking about accountability. I'm going to try to not spend too much time on this, so we can have questions and answers at the end. Because last time we barely had any time for that. But this is one of the most important topics. This is one of our core values, accountability. And today we're going to be going through understanding the pillars of accountability and the tools and strategies to hold oneself accountable and others accountable. It's very important. It's not just holding people accountable. Here we are, accountability goes both ways. We have to be accountable ourselves, and we have to hold our team accountable. And I find that when you when you become a leader, one of the biggest challenges is to hold people accountable. That's one of the biggest struggles I see in seasoned managers, but especially young managers. Like, how do I make people do what they need to do? How do I make sure that they do it? And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So what is accountability? It's very simple. Accountability is the willingness to accept responsibility for one's actions while fulfilling expectations. What I like to call it is you make a promise and you keep it, basically, or don't break your promise. If you promise that you're going to do something, just do it. So to me, accountability is just, not breaking your promises. So how to be accountable? Again, keep your promise. If you say you were going to do something, just go ahead and do it. It's very important. We talked about leadership credibility last time. When you say something, you are expected to follow through. And this is very important because if you as a leader are not doing the things you say you're going to do, you're losing credibility and your team is going to have the same problem. I see it all the time. When the leader is not accountable, 100% of the time, the team will not be accountable. So you have to hold yourself accountable as a leader first to be able to hold others accountable. It's what we say, you lead by example. Um, but again, it is extremely important because your team is going to mimic what you do. So it is very important to keep your promises. If you say you're going to do something, that you do it. But when your team tells you they're going to do something, you have to make sure that they keep their promises. I'm sure you hear about this phrase. We say it all the time, say, do, co. This is something that we live by in the word law group. And basically, what this means is say what you do what you say, and communicate when you can't. I know some people actually print this phrase and they have it like taped to their computer monitors so they see it all the time. And that's important because if you say you're going to do something, then you have to do it. And the minute you realize you cannot get it done, you need to communicate. So if you say, for example, I'm going to settle 5 cases this week by Friday at 5, that's the deadline. So by Friday at 5 p.m., I'm going to settle 5 cases. You don't tell your supervisor Friday at 4 p.m., oops, I wasn't able to meet my commitment. I communicated, yay. No, that's not the way it works. So by Wednesday at 5 p.m., you realize that you're not on track. You tell your supervisor, listen, I know I told you I was going to get it done by Friday. I had a few issues. The way it's going, I don't think I'm going to be able to get it done. These are the things that I'm planning to do to get there. But just so you know, it is highly unlikely that I'm going to be able to meet my commitment. So your supervisor already knows, okay, this person might not be able to do what they said they were going to do. If the supervisor wants to go in and maybe do an audit, there's chances to course correct if you communicate soon enough. And that's why it's so important. But again, don't wait until the last minute for somebody to ask you why you didn't get this done. You need to communicate. So again, with your team, if they tell you that you have to create this culture of checking with me. But as a leader, you have to create this habit. It takes around 20 days to create a habit. So you check in with them. You check in. So again, if the deadline was Friday, you check in every Wednesday, and you check in and you make it a habit for them to start coming to you and tell you whenever they cannot get something done and tell you with enough time. So, accountability versus ownership. These two concepts are interchangeable. So, in order to be accountable, you have to have ownership. So, accountability is doing what needs to be done because someone expects it of you. But ownership is doing what needs to be done because you expect it of yourself. So, in order to be highly accountable, you must have ownership. Now, there's a lot of uncomfortable conversations that you're going to have with people when you're trying to hold them accountable because you have to describe when there's a gap in expectation. So, whenever you see that an expectation is violated, you have to sit down and have a conversation with that person. And you can use tools like the feedback model that I showed you last week to have these conversations. What happens is that when you have too much empathy, it can be difficult to hold people accountable. And so we have people here with a lot of empathy, and we have people with not so much empathy. Doesn't mean that they're bad people. It's just that, people focus on different things. We learned in the first class that people usually focus on either system, tasks, or people. So if you have somebody that focus too much on people, like people first, that person is going to have a lot of empathy. And when you have people like myself that focus on systems and tasks, before they focus on the people, it's not that they don't focus on people, it's just that systems and tasks come before, then you tend to have less empathy. What happens when you have a lot of empathy, and that's great, to connect with your team. So when we're talking about the team dimension and you want to engage with your team and motivate them, having a leader with a lot of empathy is amazing. However, when it's time to to hold people accountable, this can be an issue. Why? Because when you have so much empathy, it's easy to let things slide. You're like, oh, well, I can see where this person is coming from. They didn't really mean it. I can see their side. I'm not going to say anything. They usually tend to avoid confrontation. They don't want to be the bad guy, right? They want to be liked, they don't want to be the bad guy, they kind of understand, and they assume that by letting it go, you're giving somebody a chance, right? So you just let it slide. So you have a person coming in late every day. They come in 5, 10 minutes late every single day. You're like, I'm not gonna say anything. They're one of my best performers. Like, why would I say anything? They get the job done. 10 minutes, it's not a big deal. And they let it go and they let it slide. And every day it's not 10 minutes, now it's 15. 15 becomes 20. And then one day you get really pissed because they disappear and they didn't show up for like 2 hours and you're wondering when they are. And then you explode. And now you're disappointed, you're done with them. You're like, how could you do this to me? I've given you so many chances. But guess what? You never had a conversation with this person. In their mind, you're crazy. Like, where is this coming from? You never told me this was an issue. This is human behavior. People are going to push boundaries a little bit here and there. And it is your job as a leader to have those uncomfortable conversations. So the minute you realize that there's an issue, that this person is coming in late, you need to sit them down and you need to have a conversation. And you need to explain why you're having that conversation. So again, beware because I know that there's a lot of people here with a lot of empathy, and again, that's great. But just be aware of that and use the tools. So you force yourself to have these conversations and to hold people accountable. So the big question is, how do we hold our employees accountable? So when we have a team, how exactly do we do it? So the first thing is set clear expectations. And I think this is by far one of the most important things. Setting clear expectations. You have to have, very clear cut expectations. People need to know exactly what you want, exactly what you expect, exactly what you need. So, for example, I personally, I start from the interview. Whenever I have an interview, and again, a lot of people in this call, I've done the interview. So I like to set the expectation from the beginning. I like to say, this is what I expect. This is what the job entails. This is, what you need to do to be successful at the job. Because I want people, when they make the decision to work here to understand where they're getting themselves into. Like I don't want surprises. So I set the expectations from the beginning. It is I really recommend to have an initial conversation with the new hire. So whenever you hire somebody new, sit down the first day and really, again, set the expectations. This is what I expect from you. This is what's going to make you successful in this position. This is what can get you fired. And not because you want to scare people, because you want to make sure they understand, expectation and consequences. Everything has to be extremely clear. You don't want somebody to come back and say, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know I was supposed to do that. I didn't know that you wanted me to do this. So again, clear expectation. Having the counseling sessions and the feedback sessions, it's important because by doing that, again, you are setting clear expectations. You are telling the person what, well, not telling, but you are, using this tool to set the expectations of what you really need and what you really want. Also, don't expect people to read your mind. I see this all the time, and this is where communication is key. Sometimes it makes perfect sense in our head, and we assume people should know. We tend to assume that because we train an employee, they should know. Because we already said it once, they should know. But the reality is that you have to be extremely specific and you cannot just assume. Again, we learn about checking an assumption. That's why we use the feedback model because we don't want to make assumptions. So when you're having a conversation with somebody, so let's say that you're a team lead and you are, doing an audit with somebody in your team, or a pod leader. You're a pod leader, you're doing an audit with somebody in your team. So you create a plan for the week. So you create a plan and you say, okay, this is the plan for the week. Here you go. You assume in your head, you're like, okay, I did the audit. I put all the cases in the Excel. I did little colors for them. It's clear, like they know what they need to do. And then when the person doesn't do what they need to do, you start questioning. You're like, oh, but why? I mean, everything was very clear. But do you ask questions? Do you request buy-in? Do you set a deadline for this? So again, you assume that because it makes total sense in your mind, and because in your mind there's no way, that you could not understand, you assume that the person is going to understand. But the reality is that you cannot ask other people to read your mind. You have to be sure and you have to be clear. And the last thing is who will do what by when. And again, this is just setting deadlines. If I tell you I need this done as soon as possible, what does that even mean? In my mind, because I have a high sense of urgency, as soon as possible is drop everything you're doing and do it right now. For somebody else, that might mean the end of the day, tomorrow, the end of the week, next month. I don't know. Again, we all have different um, ideas. We all see the world in a different way. We all use different lenses. So unless I tell you I need this done by the end of the day today, there is no, it is very likely that you're going to make an assumption and probably not do it by when I want you to do it, and there's going to be a gap in expectations. So do yourself a favor. It's very easy. Just give task a deadline. It's, simple. Whenever I have a meeting with somebody, what I do is I create action items and I ask the person, okay, so when do you think you can get this done? So this needs to get done. We need to buy a new coffee machine, right? It needs to get done. When can you get this done? So I try not to impose deadlines on people because again, they're more likely to do something if they come up with it. So I ask the employee to set the deadline. They set the deadline. I put deadlines to everything. And then at the end of the meeting, I do a recap. Okay, so just to recap, you agree to do X, Y, and Z by this time, by this day. Am I correct? Yes. Do you foresee any issues? No. Okay, so I can expect all these tasks to be done by this day? Yes. Okay, perfect. And then I copy and I send it in an email to this person. So everything is clear. So I got a verbal commitment, right? I got the deadline and a buy-in from the employee, and I also sent it in writing. So there's, everything is extremely clear because again, you have to make sure that everybody knows what they need to do and by when. So another thing is set clear consequences. If you don't know what the consequence is, you know, how do you know what to do and what not to do? It's like, why do we follow the law? Why do you drive at the speed limit? Because you know that if you go over the speed limit, you can get pulled over by a cop, right? Because that is the consequence. So most of us will try to be sensible and not speed. At least I try not to speed. Um, like a child. I remember when I was a kid, my mom was very good at setting clear consequences. Maybe I am the way I am because of that, but my mom used to be like, if you do that, you're gonna get punished for a month. And whenever she said I was gonna get punished for a month and I did something I was not supposed to do, trust me, I will be punished for an entire month. If she said no TV, that meant no TV for an entire month, no matter what. So I knew that if I did something I was not supposed to do, I was not gonna have TV for a month. And I love watching TV. So I tried to be a good girl because I did not want to get punished. It's the same with your employees. We're not here to torment people. We're not here to be bad, but there has to be consequences to actions. Every action has a consequence. And when you're very clear with what the consequence is, people understand that, okay, if I do this, this will happen. And for the most part, that should, help people make certain decisions. So what are example of clear of consequences? Disciplinary actions, a warning, a write-up, suspension. If you do something you're not supposed to do, or if there's a gap in expectations, there could be disciplinary actions depending on the gravity of the offense. And depending on, how bad it is, it can also lead to termination. So these are consequences that when you're talking to somebody about a gap in expectations, these are the things that you talk about. And again, this is not to intimidate anybody, is to make sure that we're extremely clear as to what's going to happen if we don't do what you're supposed to do. Now, immediate feedback, and we talked about this last week. It has to be non-emotional, and please get ready before you have the conversation. So for those of you that don't know the feedback model by memory, write it down and practice it a little bit before you get ready to have that conversation so you're ready. And you know the feedback model really helps, and doing immediate feedback, like catching the offense and calling it out immediately, is key to the relationship with the employee. So when you let a few small issues slide, they eventually become big issues. So like the example that I told you about coming late. Some of you I saw coming late today, so I might have a conversation with you guys. But yeah, like, you know, if you let the little issues slide, like, somebody coming late all the time and you don't say anything, it's gonna become a big issue. You're gonna blow up. We don't want that. You want to have an uncomfortable conversation on the spot for a small issue now and make sure that we're on the same page and it doesn't happen again, that to blow up and then tell somebody you're done. I'm done with you. Like, we don't want to get there. And remember, every feedback should be counseling. You're here to coach the person, not to reprimand. Whenever you're having an uncomfortable conversation or a feedback conversation with an employee because there is a gap in expectation, you're not there to lecture them. You're not there to shame them. You're not there to tell them that they did something bad and now you're disappointed. You're there. That conversation, which will be uncomfortable, it will be, but that uncomfortable conversation is for you to move forward, is to coach you, to make sure you understand that you violated the expectations. This is what I expect from you. This is what needs to be done. Let's create a plan to make sure this doesn't happen again. Commit to the plan. Okay, let's move forward now. That is the purpose. So you should feel like like coaching, not like punishment, basically. And the reason I asked permission to share this example. So I asked Giselle if I could share this example because I don't want to embarrass anybody. But I tend to have a lot of those uncomfortable conversations. Okay. And there is people usually have the perception if people that work with me very, very closely know me. But people that don't work with me closely have this perception that I'm very like scary, or I'm too tough, or I'm like an ogre, you know what I mean? Like if I'm gonna talk to you, I'm gonna fire you. So, people have this perception. Why? Because I do have a lot of uncomfortable conversations. I do. I don't want I don't want to have ever a conversation when I'm telling you you're fired. I never want to get there. I've been in this company for almost 10 years, and in 10 years I've only fired 3 people. In 10 years, only 3 people are fired. And so somebody like Giselle, who everybody loves Giselle, and Giselle is super approachable, super nice. Everybody loves her. She's probably the most popular manager here, Um, and she's very nice, And Giselle, she's been here for what, 5 years? And in fact, so half the time that I've been here, she has fired 3 times the people I have fired. Okay. And I don't want to put Giselle on the spot, but Giselle is extremely nice. And she has a lot of empathy. And, you know, she used to let a lot of things slide because she didn't want the employee to feel bad. She's all about, I want my employees to feel good. I want to be there for them. And that's great. But what happened is because she wasn't having those uncomfortable conversations, she swallowed a lot. She swallowed a lot. And then it got to the point where I'm done with you. You cross the line, now you're fired. Because once you cross the line, it's very hard to go back, you know. So Giselle in the last year, she has, changed a lot. And now she's having those uncomfortable conversations. And I'm sure that if you're in her team, you have noticed that she is very good at using the feedback model. She's very good at addressing issues right away. She learned that it's more painful for her to do that, to get to that, point of no return. Firing somebody is so hard. It is so emotionally draining because we're human. We build connections with people, and it's so hard to let somebody go. So how do you avoid that? Well, if you're having this, conversation, if you're holding people accountable, if you're, doing discussion sessions, if you don't let these small issues slide, I promise you that by having an uncomfortable conversation now, you're going to save yourself so much pain in the future. All right. So let's move on. You need to get the employee to commit to the plan, right? So again, you can use the feedback model, you can use the grow model. There's a lot of tools that you can use that we already learned before. And like I said, you need to practice them, make sure you use them. If you don't use them, they're not effective. But the employee has to buy into the plan. So whenever you have that conversation, at the end of that conversation, and again, it's not a lecture, it's a coaching session. So it's not like you did this wrong, never do it again, bye. No. It's like you go through the questions, you ask a lot of questions, you see what the real issue is, you address it, the employee is going to tell you what they're going to do different, you create a plan, you get buy-in at the end. So are you willing to commit to this? So are we on the same page about this? This is not going to happen again. Okay. Are you sure? Yes. Is this doable? Is this plan that you came up with doable? Yes. Okay, perfect. Let's move on. So in the example of somebody coming late, um, if you come in late, like if we're addressing, okay, where are you getting stuck? What worked for you? Where are you getting stuck? What would you do differently? It could be that the person, they live very far and there's a lot of traffic. Okay, we can maybe change the schedule. Maybe you can come in half an hour later. I don't know. There's a lot of things that we can do. And then once you get to that plan, the employee gets buying, they make a promise, and then the whole point is that they keep the promise. So just keep in mind that if there's no agreement, there's no execution. just by telling somebody to do something, it's not going to happen. The employee or the person needs to buy in. And remember that everything that we're covering here works, you can use with, your coworkers, with your employees if you're in a leadership position, but you can also use it at home. I mean, this stuff works everywhere, you can use it with your kids. This is something that is universal. That's why I feel like it's so powerful because you can use it anywhere. All right. So documenting all the feedback session, all the warnings and write-ups. Document, document, document. Send it to HR, please. You know, this will help you keep track of all the topics discussed with the employee, including the frequency of each issue. Oopsie. Wait. All right. And so why do we document everything? Because I mean, if you have a large team, you will forget, when if you have a conversation about attendance, right? 3 times in 6 months, you're gonna forget that you had this conversation 6 months ago. So document everything. Make sure you send everything to HR. Whenever you're ready to have an uncomfortable conversation with somebody, you can pull a file and you can see if this offense was committed in the past. So now you have ammunition. When you come to a feedback conversation about accountability, you have to come with the facts. You don't come with your emotions. You don't come with your assumptions. You don't come with, what you think, what you feel, your perception of the events. You come with facts, right? And how do you get your facts? You document everything. So, as an employee, because we all employees here at the end of the day, as employees, if your supervisor, the person you report to, has an uncomfortable conversation with you and gives you a write-up or gives you a warning, don't take it personal. This is not a bad thing. You know, this is a business and this is just the way it works. You have to address the situation, you have to document it. So a lot of people get frustrated, they get dismotivated whenever they get a write-up. This is not supposed to dismotivate you. This is supposed to create a plan to move forward, and this is to document the offense. That's all. That's the, there's nothing else behind it. Make sure you also explain that to whoever you're having this conversation with. So follow through with consequences. Again, if you tell somebody, if you coming late, more, more than 15 minutes late, I'm gonna give you a write-up. Let's say that's the issue. Well, if the person comes in late, half an hour late, and they already know that, you told them that they were gonna get a write-up if they did it again, and they do it, and you do not give them the write-up, you lose all credibility. Again, it's like a parent. As a parent, if you tell your child, if you break that, I'm going to punish you, and then they break it, and then you don't punish them, they will lose respect for you. Those are those, misbehaved kids that you see, throwing tantrums on the store because their parents never follow through with the consequences. Same thing, same thing. Again, this is human nature. If you threaten people, and we're not here to threaten anybody, but again, if you threaten somebody with a consequence and then the offense happens and the consequence doesn't, you don't follow through with the consequences, then they're going to do whatever you want. They're not going to be accountable and you're going to have an accountability problem. So explaining what the consequences are, but following through with those consequences is essential. So check yourself, check your team, make sure that you're doing this, because if not, you can have all the uncomfortable conversations that you want, that if there are no consequences, it's useless. Now, be consistent with your approach. This is also very important. You cannot be, let's say that, you're pissed. Your team has an accountability problem. You're having uncomfortable conversations with everybody, giving write-ups left and right. And then 2 weeks later, you're done with the write-ups and then you don't do anything. Like, you're too hard, you're too cold, you're too tough sometimes, you're too lenient some other times. That confuses people. People don't know what to expect. And again, we spoke about at the beginning as, setting, making sure that everything is clear. So making sure that the expectations are clear. If people don't know what to expect with you, how are they going to do what you need them to do? So make sure that whatever your approach is, you're very consistent with it. If you're having, conversations with people on the spot, make sure that you always have conversations with people on the spot. If you're giving, note to files and warnings and write-off, make sure that you do that consistently. Consistency is key. If you're not consistent, you're not going to see any change in accountability in your team. So it's extremely important. And obviously, follow up. Follow up is very, very important. Like if you agree to something with someone, follow up, make sure that they're getting it done. It's extremely important. Following up is crucial to accountability to make sure that the plan that was established gets executed. And so I want to talk to you about an example of an employee. Um, she's a great employee of mine. She's been with me for many years. And, going back to the little example of, coming late, um, she used to come in late, like 5 minutes. I didn't say anything. And I'm telling you this so you see, because even though I know this stuff, I make the mistakes all the time. That's why we have to practice this. This is not just like, oh, I know it, that's it. Like you have to put it into practice, and you have to really force yourself to do this for this to actually work. So again, I'm all about accountability. I'm all about how those conversations. But, I had this employee, she will come in late, she started coming in late 5 minutes. And I was like, 5 minutes, not a big deal. Then 10 minutes. I'm like, okay, 10 minutes, not a big deal. Then 15 minutes, it became a pattern. You have to be careful with those patterns. Again, if you don't address them in time, it can become a big issue. And I was starting to get upset about this, but I didn't say anything because she was a good performer. Like she was very good at her job. She is very good at her job. So I said, I'm not going to be, I'm not going to be a pain. I'm not going to say anything. At the end of the day, she gets the job done. So, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, it's not a big deal. So I let it go, didn't say anything, but I started to get a little bit upset. And then it was sometimes 20 minutes. And I'm just like, and now I'm like, okay, what the hell? What is this? What do you think this is? And then, again, I started to get a little bit upset. So in my mind, it's like, I'm already done. And then one day, this person just doesn't show to work. An hour goes by, and I'm like, where is this person? An hour and a half goes by. She didn't text me. I'm asking around. Nobody knows where she is. And she just shows up. And an hour and a half later, like just minding her own business, like nothing happened. And I lost it. Like I lost it because I was so disappointed. Like, how could you do this to me? I gave you so many chances. But she was shocked. She was shocked that I felt that way. So I had to collect myself, you know, put my leader hat because sometimes I don't always have it on. Again, we're all human. It's okay. We make mistakes. And so I'm like, okay, I know what to do. Okay. I know what to do. That is also the problem that most of the time we know what to do, but we don't do it. And I'm like, I'm gonna follow my own advice and I'm gonna do what I know I'm supposed to do. So I talked to her. I did the feedback model because I wanted to get to the bottom of why this is happening. Because in my mind, this is the story I'm creating in my mind. This person doesn't respect me. Because if she respected me, she wouldn't do this to me. So I already have an assumption in my head and I'm ready to kill somebody, right? But I was like, no, let me see what's happening. I did the feedback model. I got to the bottom of the issue. It had nothing to do with the story I had in my head. Um, there were some issues there, legitimate issues that we were able to talk about. We created a plan together, and again, we did this using the feedback model, non-emotional because that's the purpose of the feedback model. So we created a plan. explained the expectations. I explained the gap in expectation, how she was not meeting my expectations. I explained the consequences. And then, we created a plan. She committed to the plan. She promised it was never going to happen again. I explained that actions have consequences, and an offense like this, taking into consideration the pattern that she had, plus this offense that warranted a write-up, and I had no choice but to give her a write-up. I explained why I was giving her the write-up. She understood. She signed the write-up, and then we move forward. I've never had an issue with her after that. Never again, you know? It was so uncomfortable for both of us. It was really uncomfortable. But that's what happens, when you don't address things on the spot. And after that, I promised myself, I'm like, I'm never gonna let it get to this. So I really, really try to have this feedback models, the feedback sessions with people right away, so we don't get to a point where, we're just done. So what was done during that conversation is that I set the expectation, I explained the consequences, I followed through with the consequences, I got buy-in from her, and then obviously after I gave her the write-up, I sent it to HR, so everything is documented. So this is how we create accountability. And again, it has not happened again. So I feel like we had a good accountability conversation. So these are the common rookie mistakes we make as leaders. Once again, letting small issues slide because the employee is a good performer, not setting the expectations clearly, not explaining consequences clearly, not following through with consequences once an infraction is committed, lack of consistency, enforcing rules, not documenting infractions and feedback sessions, and not giving immediate feedback. So this is the things that we do wrong on a day-to-day. And I want to recommend this book. Some of you have read it. Again, what I just spoke about, this is very brief. It's a little nugget of what accountability is, but I try to make it, something that applies to us in the day to day. But if you really want to dive into accountability, I recommend this book 100%. It's great. It goes into a lot more details. It introduces a lot of concepts. It shows you how to have different kinds of conversation. It gives you a ton of examples. So crucial accountability, recommended 100%. Please read it, especially um, if you acknowledge that you might have an accountability issue, or if accountability is something that's hard for you, this is a great book to read. And that is it. I'm not sharing my screen anymore, right? Okay. So, questions. I feel like I talked a lot. Questions about this? I don't know if you don't have questions because you're confused. Oh, because I was extremely clear with the presentation. Okay, so this everything ties together. I mean, as you can see, how to have accountability conversations. You can use the tools that we learned before, which are the feedback model and the growth model. You see how everything goes hand in hand, how you can use your leadership styles, right? Understanding the follower mindset and applying the leadership style that resonates with that person, so you can have an effective accountability conversation. You see how everything kind of comes together. It's like a puzzle. You need every piece to become a great leader, you know? And so you need to learn all the little pieces, and then you just put them together, and then and then you go for it. I think honestly, accountability, like I said, it works both ways. You know, you have to be accountable. You need to hold your team accountable. But now some of you that, also understand when you have a manager or a supervisor giving you feedback and having those conversations with you, now you know where they're coming from, right? I know everybody's ready for Thanksgiving. So again, any questions, doubts, comments? Okay, so how can you guys apply this? Because again, if you don't practice it, it's useless. So tell me one thing you're going to do to apply these concepts that we learned today. If you don't speak up, I'm gonna call on you.
Amalia, let me talk then. So, I think it's very helpful because I consider myself as someone that has too much empathy. Sometimes, I feel like ashamed, not ashamed, but I feel weird when I have to provide feedback and perhaps it's someone that, is not going that good on, for example, on the calls, right? So I feel like it's a difficult situation when I have to provide feedback or give feedback or set someone accountable because I have a lot of empathy. I'm too sweet, I will say. So these steps, I believe it will be great because I can set expectations, for example, from the very beginning, let them know, okay, so this is what I need you to do. This is how we're going to do it. If you do not do it, then this will be the consequences. And if the consequences didn't happen, then we would have to proceed to a write up or a verbal or whatever. So I believe that having these ideas more clear will help me to be less sweet, less empathetic. I know it's not I do not know how to explain it, but I believe it's very it will be very helpful and it's very great. So thank
Okay.
you.
Sure. I don't want you guys to be mean. That's not the purpose. Okay. You can still be empathetic. And again, that's a great thing to have. You can connect with your team easier. It is easier to connect with people when you have that empathy. But what I personally like to do is that whenever I'm having an uncomfortable conversation with somebody, I like to explain. And I usually, and again, I've had a lot of uncomfortable conversation with a lot of people in this call. So, and I usually explain why I'm doing this. My time is precious. If I'm having this conversation with you, it's because I care. If I didn't care, I wouldn't even look at you. I'm not even going to waste my time talking to you. The fact that I'm taking my time to address this to make sure that we can move forward is because I care about your development. I care about you. I care about our relationship. I care about your future. Because otherwise, I can just be like, eh, fire. I can fire you. That's it. So like also explain it to people because again, people love to make assumptions. Oh, she's giving me a write up. Like she hates me. Why? The victim mentality. Me. Everything happens to me. Sorry, but that's how it sounds in my head when people have that, mentality instead of owning it, ownership. You know what? Yes, I am not happy that nobody likes feedback. I'll be honest. It's funny because in the interviews, people are like, feedback. I love when people give me feedback because I can improve. Right. Yes, you like the result of the feedback, the improvement side, result, but nobody likes to be told that, you know, you did this wrong, you could do this better. We don't like it, but it's necessary. And if you take the time to, educate people and to, explain people why you're doing it, I think it can go better. Like the conversation will go better, and people will get to know you little by little and understand that you mean well. You just have to do it. So thank you, Sandy, for sharing. Who else? Who else?
Hi, Amalia.
Hi.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so let's say you're not a leader yet, but
Mhm.
you want to start applying these leader characteristics, but then you do apply and someone's like, but wait a minute, she's not even my manager or like, someone that can provide me these feedbacks. How can you go about that situation?
Well, again, you can use feedback with anybody. And how do you start the feedback model? You ask people for permission. Because remember, nobody likes to be told what to do, and people don't like advice. If you come, if you approach a situation with, let me give you an advice, probably they're gonna be like, who the hell you think you are? You know? But if you say, hey, listen, I've noticed this. Do you have time to discuss it now? Is it okay to discuss it? Do you want to discuss it with me? If they say no, then yeah, just walk away. You cannot force people. But if they say yes, they're open to hear from you. And then you can go ahead and do the feedback. I have people here that are not in a leadership position that do feedback to each other all the time, you know. So it has become kind of a joke, in a way, because it's like, yeah, I know what you're doing. So for example, somebody has a bad day and they scream at you. They don't mean to, but they just say something mean to you. You can do a feedback model on them, like there's nothing wrong with that. Again, you can use it in so many times, so many ways, in so many scenarios. But yeah, and you can use it with your kids. That's also good. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. And for the accountability as well, Gabriel, because let's say, so you're in client support, right? So let's say that there's somebody else in client support. They're supposed to be available, they're not available, and now you're getting flooded with all these calls because somebody's just not doing their job. It's okay, you know to have a conversation with them. Hey, again, very respectful. You ask for permission, and then you can say, listen, this is the expectations. You're supposed to be picking up these phone calls, like, what has worked for you in the past? Like, where are you getting stuck? What's happening? Where are you getting stuck? What else? What else? What else? Okay, what would you do differently? That's a very, non-confrontational conversation that you can have with a team member. You don't have to be their supervisor to have that conversation. Alrighty. Who else has a question? Any of you in a leadership position that needs to have an uncomfortable conversation with one of your employees? Everything is beautiful and peachy. I'm glad. I am so happy that everything is good. Okay, Mari, talk to me. How can you apply these concepts? How are you going to apply what you learned today in your day to day?
It's actually funny because Sandy kind of touched on something that I noticed about myself with the empathy aspect. Um, so I was like thinking like, how can I still show that empathy, but still be firm and like show like, okay, like I I'm telling you this, but I want you to take it seriously, but I'm not being mean to you. Like I still want to have that connection, but not come off as like, you have to do this and you meet all this and all those different things. So then your answer and the whole thing of them knowing why you're doing it, it's just for their benefit, like just approaching the conversation differently, as in, okay, look, I want to talk about XYZ. This is just for your benefit. You're not in trouble. Like this is to improve, and just so they know, okay, they're still on my side. There's still that mutual. I mean, there should still be that respect regardless, but there's still the respect and the connection going. But they understand now, okay, this is, they're telling me this, I have to meet this, and whatever plan that has to be followed after.
Jennifer, what about you?
Hi, hi everyone. So, well, I was thinking that
most likely, what I will try to apply to make the feedback immediately because sometimes, as you were explaining, if we just let it slide some things, and you don't do it immediately, then you will forget it, or the person will forget it, or tell you about, well, this was some time where you telling me until this moment, and it doesn't really work. So I think that for me, I will be applying, try to apply that and making immediately so it can be effective.
Okay, great.
I agree with Jennifer. I feel like that's one of the things that I struggle with, actually doing it immediately. I tend to like put off those types of conversations. And then when they do it again, I'm like, oh, if I would have had the conversation a week ago, 2 weeks ago, they wouldn't have done it again. So I feel like that's something that as a leader, that's what I struggle with.
So
Okay.
I feel that my struggle right now is not the immediate feedback, but using the model. Sometimes it's like, okay, I have to be immediate. Let me call. Hey, I don't have to do a feedback model on you, but this is wrong. Fix it. So I catch myself doing that. Then I try to, like make a long meeting and try to apply like the empathy side and the feedback model and get to the bottom of the issue. But for me, I feel that still it takes me a while to do the feedback model properly, like to use all the, I mean, I know that it's supposed to be like 10 minutes, but I'm not able to do it in 10 minutes. So that's my struggle right now.
Okay, so Karen, you and I are very similar in the sense that when we don't have the highest amount of empathy. So actually using the feedback model is great because it gets rid of the emotion. You know what I mean? So for somebody like you and me in particular, the feedback model should be even, a must. So, like I said last time, when I don't have time, right, because you just want to say something quick, what I do is that I might not do the entire feedback model. I just do, hey, I want to talk to you about that deposit that was supposed to come in today, that you promised it was going to come in today, and it didn't come in. Do you have a minute? Okay, so what do you think that you can do differently? It will be obviously more effective if you go through the whole thing, but you can just be like, okay, you promised me something, you didn't do it, this cannot happen again. What do you think you can do different in the future? Okay, what else? What else? What else? What else? What else? What else? Okay, great. So you agree that you're gonna moving forward, you're gonna do X, Y, and Z, correct? Yes. Okay, so we have a plan that moving forward, this is what you're gonna do? Yes. Okay, thank you. Instead of calling this person and you didn't do this, you promised this, we were counting with this, now the team is short, now performance, like our projection is completely off because you said that you were going to do it, you told me until the last minute you were going to do it and you didn't do it. See the difference? So it should be, you can make it fast. Anybody else? Wait, you see how I did there? So let me go again. Who else? Daniela.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, hi everyone. So, sorry, I just want to lower my. Okay, so, no, I just wanted to say that then what we usually want to do when something doesn't go as planned, like, why did you do this to me? This is not what was supposed to happen. Why did you do this? And please fix it. So I think we are accustomed to have these type of conversations at home. Like, why didn't you have the chicken done? And so, yeah, so we have to unlearn that. What we learned at home, we have to unlearn that in order to proceed with the model of the feedback.
Yeah. And it's really hard. It's really hard to go against your nature, So that's a great point, Daniela. I agree. Okay, so I know Thanksgiving is coming. This is a short week, but I'm gonna give you guys homework. Please look into the book that I recommended. It's very good. It's a quick read. It's not that long. But try to, identify that an accountability conversation that you need to have with somebody and have it using the tools that you have learned up to now. Okay. And try to practice that, whether it is with somebody that reports to you or a coworker or a spouse or a child, because again, this works in every scenario. Identify one person that you need to have an accountability conversation with and practice it. Okay? Good? All right, guys. Thank you very much. And remember, next time I need everybody with the cameras on. So I want to see your faces. All right. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day
Bye.
and happy
Happy
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving.
Bye.
That's giving.
Bye.
Happy
Happy
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.